now the provision of or the financing of higher education now, but also in the coming future. So that one will also have its own panel, and you will know about the members of that particular panel. So to save our time, knowing that also almost everyone now is in the room, I would like to invite now to this podium the Chief Executive Officer of the Higher Education Loans Board, Dr. Bill Kiwia, who is going to give now the presentation, assessing the 2 decades of higher education financing in Tanzania, reflecting on the achievements, lessons, and future outlook. Kwa Kiswahili atatathmini miongo miwili ya ufadhili wa elimu ya juu nchini Tanzania, mafanikio, mafunzo na mtazamo wa baadaye. Tumpigie makofi Dr. Kiwia. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much. You can use this one. Okay. Slides zichekwa? Slides zipo.
It's 30 minutes.
Okay. Again, thank you so much, Master of Ceremony Mahundi, my fellow academic fellow, for this opportunity. As he mentioned, my name is Bill Kiwia. I'm the Executive Director for the Higher Education Students Loans Board. And my role today is to explain the journey in which the Higher Education Student Loans Board has been from its inception. Why was it, why we decided to establish Loans Board? Unfortunately, okay. From its inception to historical background, and then afterwards, what are the key institutional framework that prevails, and also some of the achievements that we had. And then the last 2 parts are the lesson learned, as well as the strategic outlook and conclusion. As I go through, please bear with me. Sometimes I maybe go forward and then coming backwards and then going forward, depending on an idea. Sometimes I may have some idea which I would like to share with you, so I can also explain to you. So we are essentially the student financing body. And since we are the student financing body, Tanzania education sector experienced a significant transformation from 1992 to 2000 and 2001 and 2. And there were a number of policies that were introduced that aimed at improving as well as trying to strengthen the education sector. And in that context, the element of financing also came into play. Why? Because we were also trying to figure out how we can best provide support to those candidates who have been qualified for the higher education programs. As our former President, Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, mentioned, that the need to have a student financing body came as a result of the challenges that arise during the late 90s and the early 2000s. So in that context, the government decided to establish a policy of cost sharing, which eventually led to the enactment of what we call the Higher Education Students Loans Board. Now, what is the Higher Education Student Loans Board? The Higher Education Students Loans Board is according to the law, it's a revolving fund. But it began with the board, which eventually will be transformed into a revolving fund. And the Higher Education Student Loans Board had been given a mandate to perform 2 functions. The first one is the provision of what we call the provision of financing, but on the other side, we were also given a mandate of recovering those loans that have matured. So these are the 2 functions which we were in charge with by the government to supervise or to ensure that we are managing these particular loans. Now, before coming into operation, the aspect of financing or the aspect of providing loans to students were directly managed by the government under the Ministry of Finance, under the Ministry of Education. And it's highlighted there, meaning that between 1994 to 2004, most of the loans were managed under the ministry. And the loan beneficiary increased from 6,000 to 16,000 by 2004, 2005. And then at the time of disbursement, some of the disbursed loans were actually, it grew from 1.65 billion to 9.8 billion. However, after the establishment of the Higher Education Student Loans Board, we started issuing loans at around to the tune of 56 billion, aimed at covering students ranging between 42,729 to 72,035. However, currently we are serving around 247 students, and we are providing, or we are disbursing close to around 787 billion on an annual basis. Now, this is a significant leap, and until to date, we continue to depend, I will say, on government subvention, meaning that 100% of the money that is being disbursed to students are from government subvention. However, we have also made a significant leap in terms of collection. Remember, we have two mandates. We have the mandate of issuance of loans and disbursement of loans, but on the other side, we also have the mandate of recovering loans that have matured. And from 2004 to 2017, up to 2023, the amount of loans that have matured rose from 55 million to 199 billion. This is like a significant leap of around 400%, I would say, because we had taken a number of measures to ensure that we are providing those particular, we are recovering the loans that have matured. But not only that, also Higher Education Student Loans Board started also to expand the kind of product that we are offering to the public. Why? Because initially we began with just issuance of loans to students who are enrolled in a degree program. But now we have managed to go not only providing loans to those students who are in undergraduate, but rather also we are providing facility to students who also have enrolled in vocational education. Why this is important? Because we believe in terms of the overall impact, vocational training or vocational education or technical vocational education have a direct impact in the economy. So we have begun to start issuing loans to students who are pursuing at a level of diploma for those students who are taking technical and vocational training. Similarly, apart from providing these loans, Higher Education Student Loans Board also began to explore other means, and through the close collaboration with the ministry, we managed to start something called a merit-based Samia Scholarship, which was launched for the purpose of supporting high-achieving individuals, but also financially disadvantaged students. Now, why do we mention all these things? Because in a nutshell, when we look at it in terms of cumulative, you will see that we managed to leapfrog from 6,000 students in 1994 to now almost 247 students. That's a significant leap, isn't it? And in terms of the cumulative, we have managed to disburse loans to more than 830,000 students since our inception. And the total amount that has been disbursed to students is estimated to around 3 trillion Tanzanian shillings, which is equivalent to around close to 1.5 billion of altogether. So it's a significant amount of money that has been disbursed to students at higher education. But apart from that, we are also continuously improving our systems. Why? Because in terms of disbursement, we were supposed to collect loans that are due, estimated to around 2.3 trillion. However, our capacity to collect is only 1.67 trillion. This means that we only collect 70% of the loans that are actually due. However, we can improve this further if we continue to strengthen our governance, we continue to strengthen our database, and continue to strengthen the integration of systems so that we can have visibility altogether. Going back to the disbursement, previously, when we were issuing loans, we used to cover a handful percentage. And if you look at this particular graph here, you can see that at the beginning, we only cover 70% of our loan recipients. But our peak reached 77%. But now we only have 62% as per 2023-2024. This means that there is a significant amount of students who are still able and qualified to obtain facility or to obtain loans, but due to several challenges, we were unable to fulfill their goals. However, as we continue to provide these particular services, a greater percentage of these students are what we call the financially disadvantaged students. And hence, in terms of coverage for those who, what we call the needy students, we were able to reach them to the level of 100%. So in that context, what I will say is that our graph here shows that we are at an increasing trend. Why I'm saying we are at an increasing trend, we went from 6,000 students to almost 227 students per annum. And in terms of the distribution of the financing, 40% of our beneficiaries are actually female. And we have increased a number of facility or loans, particularly to students who are in rural and underserved areas. And also, we have extended our facility to diploma students. Why I'm saying this? Because these are I will call it the disadvantaged group. The disadvantaged group. And for us, Higher Education Students Loans Board, these are the areas that we think we can provide particular support. Now, in terms of the governance structure for the Higher Students Loans Board, our board is under the Ministry of Education, and this needs to be solidified. We are under the Ministry of Education, and it is a semi-autonomous institution that consists of a board of directors and also management. We also work together closely with our several key stakeholders who are the Ministry of Finance, who are Ministry of Planning, and etc. All of these are our key stakeholders. We also work together with the National Examination Council of Tanzania, Tanzania Commission for Universities, and National, what we call this, National NACTVET, I would say. It's for the regulator for the vocational and technical institution or tertiary institution. Now, what is the relevance of this? The relevance of this is that our governance structure shows the a typical financial, what we call social impact financial institution. Why? Because we have representation from the Ministry of Education, but also we have the Ministry of Finance, which is responsible for the Treasury. So in a nutshell, we have a good representation that represent interests of different stakeholders. And all of these have a role in the decision-making process. And also as a Higher Education Student Loans Board, we operate in 6 zones, and we have our offices throughout the country. Now, what is the impact, or what is the key benefit of higher education? What are the achievements so far? As I said earlier, our key achievement is the increase in the number of beneficiaries. From 6,000 to 227, cumulatively, you are talking about around 830 students. Similarly, when it comes to the disbursement of loans, we have managed to disburse loans of equivalent amount of 8.2 trillion. And for this year alone, we are disbursing close to 787 billion, covering for 247 students. And when it comes to the gender, providing support to the gender initiatives, 40% of our, or 44% of our loans are actually were allocated to female beneficiaries. So it means that we are at a gender, close to gender parity, because we can say that 50% of our facilities have been utilized by female and male students. Similarly, also, we have geographical representation throughout the country. Why? Because our offices are operating throughout the country, and in terms of technology, 95% of our systems or 95% of our operations are digitized currently. So that means starting from application of the loan, to the disbursement of the loan, to the collection of the loan, to the provision of information and feedback, all of them are in a digital format. And last year, we have launched what we called an app, a digital app that operates both in the what we call Apple iOS operating system and Android. So our desired goal is to go 100% digital. However, it's a work in progress. And what we anticipate is that the upcoming systems, such as the omni-channel system and the artificial intelligence and machine learning, will help us to reach our goal of becoming a paperless institution. Our desire is to become a paperless, and we think we can be able to achieve that. Now, however, there are some number of critical challenges that we face. And these challenges are essentially mainly due to the adaptation or due to some of the legislative mandate. One of the biggest challenges that we have is that we are still in a transition mode from a board to a revolving fund. And the board model can be seen as we need to shift from a board model into a fund model to create that particular sustainability. We thank the ministry, we thank the parliament, they are seeing this, and we are also looking to our neighbors as well, and we have seen that the transition from being a board into a higher education fund will create that sustainability and avoid overdependence on government subvention. This is one of the key issues which mainly are attached in the regulatory and policy aspect. Another challenge that we have is alignment of labor and national priorities. Alignment with the labor and national priorities are one of the key issues which will be the key, especially when it comes to merit-based programs or merit-based scholarship. Why? Because when we are creating these merit-based scholarship program, first of all, we have a challenge of limitation of funds, but also we need to look at the priority programs so that we can ensure that they are actually stimulating the economy and etc. Another issue that we face is the issue of traceability. Remember, we are collecting only 70%, even though for Africa perspective, our collection rate is the highest. For Africa perspective, our collection rate is the highest, meaning that we collect 70% of the loans that are due. However, we can collect more, which means that we need to integrate with other systems so that we can be able to trace and bill those beneficiaries who have benefited out of these particular loans. We have already integrated with NIDA, and we have started to operationalize it. We are in the process of integrating. Actually, we have finished integrating with TRA, and very soon we will announce that we have started operationalizing TRA, but more needs to be done. Especially, for example, we also need to attach our database or our infrastructure, the technological infrastructure, with social security number or this new number which is called Jamii number, in order to track the beneficiary and ensure we achieve the 100% tracing and billing. Similarly also, we need to work together with the private sector. Why? Because private sector can help us in terms of tracking. Private sector can help us in terms of monitoring, and private sector also can assist us in terms of expansion. However, we are still encouraging, or we are inviting the private sector to work together with us in a form of PPP collaboration so that we can improve our traceability and also even accessing financing. Because why? Because when we work together, we can raise more funds and ensure that there is sustainability within the board. Another challenge that we face is the issue of financial risk. For example, when it comes to the loans, sometimes there are challenges of some of the beneficiaries who continue to face repayment difficulties. So future reform in terms of how do we engage graduate, how do we insulate the default risk, are some of the things we need to look into. For example, we can also consider to see how we can best support, create an insurance program in which we can cover for this particular default risk in the future. Similarly, also the issue of loan recovery disparity across the sectors, and also the availability of fund to provide financing are some of the issues which are challenges for us as Higher Education Students Loans Board. Now, the final challenge that we face is whether should we continue with the debate of needs or equity, or we should shift to merit-based support. Why do we say whether we should continue with a need-based funding model or we should shift to a merit-based funding model? This is simply because due to the socio-economic environment that we are facing and due to the pressing need of some of the areas which we are required to support, there is an increasing pressure to see we should transfer, or we should shift ourselves from the equity argument into more of a merit argument. And why this is important? Because we see we have a number of possible candidates, good candidates, but we don't take them on board simply because we focus on equity. So this debate of equity and merit-based is a long-term debate, which I think we need to discuss it in order to see whether we should continue with our what we call the need basis, or we should shift to a merit-based approach. Similarly, also the issue of ever-pressing need of diploma and vocational programs that also have a widened access. These are some of the issues that we also fear, because at a diploma level we have so many. Currently we have only not more than 75 universities. However, if you include the diploma, you have around 200 institutions, higher learning institutions. So that means that we will also face a challenge in terms of outreach. How do we best expand our services to those particular areas? Similarly, also there is an issue of special needs students. You see, in our Higher Education Student Loans Board, we have 5 products. We have meals and accommodation, we have tuition fee, we have special needs allowance, we have field and research, and we also have one particular, anyway, I will mention it later. But however, there is an ever-growing need of special needs students in which we need to provide them support, and we need to improve their work studying environment. So these are some of the issues that we face, and our future outlook is very promising. Our future outlook is very promising. And why do I say so? Because number one, we are seeing an increased strengthening of financial sustainability and also the expansion of technology. We are a tech-savvy institution. We have embraced technology, and it is helping us in terms of tracing, in terms of billing, but also in terms of disbursing financing. And we see that is the best way forward for us as an institution. Similarly also, we see that by strengthening legislative reform and policy reform, we can be able to realize that dream of having an institution which is actually sustainable. Similarly also, we are also enjoying, I would say, an enhanced stakeholders partnership. Why? Because as you can see in our most of the banners and board here, we have different stakeholders, especially from the private sector, whom we are working closely with. And hence, we strongly encourage more private sector to join in. Why this is important? Because it will help us in terms of trying to come up with some innovative product. I'll give you an example. Our colleagues from Kenya, they have different kind of products. They have loans and grant. They have loans partially. They have grant complete, 100% scholarship. They have different kind of products. And this is possible only because there is a role of private sector that came in that helps to strengthen and expansion this product, and also creating that inclusive element within the financing of higher education. Similarly also, we are seeing that there is a need for Higher Education Student Loans Board to have a much wider outreach. We shouldn't focus on just long-term programs. We should also look at short-term programs. Why I'm saying this? Because we have our colleagues, for example, in Kenya and Uganda. Wanyama is here. They are also supporting students who are taking CPA, isn't it? Yes, Certified Public Accounting. Yes. So now we should also thinking of that as well. Why? Because it is part of the providing support, part of financing students who are taking this particular program. So what I would like to say is that HESB is at the cornerstone. I would say it is in between those who have the dreams and those who are pursuing the dreams and those who have achieved the dream. And I believe with the strategies that we have and the team that we have, our future is very bright. And I welcome suggestions, opinion, and views so that we can improve our services in order to provide better services. Thank you so much.
Let's put our hands together again for Dr. Bill Kiwia. Thank you very much for such an insightful presentation of the journey of 20 years, but also a lot of data and information about how our government through the Loan Board has navigated through this process of delivering the dreams of those who are in the education sector. The sum of 8.2 trillion cumulative until today is a very big sum of money. So we should also clap to the government for achieving this goal. But also to the team led by Dr. Bill, processing over 787 billion worth of money in a year to distribute this amount to students, trying to strike gender balance, attaining some of the key sustainability goals, for example, in terms of the use of technology to ensure that the process is efficient, but also all the key people are also included in the process. So now we are going to have a panel to discuss this presentation further and have even some more different perspectives from the police perspective to the private sector, but also in a more technical perspective. So we are going to have our panel now. We will have Dr. Peter Murray, Director of Loans and Disbursement at the Higher Education Students Loans Board. Please come forward and take a seat. But I would like also to announce that when you scan the QR code there, you are able also to engage in a digital platform for which you can do Q&A. So you can ask questions, you can also give some comments, and those ones are going to be captured by the technical team at the Loans Board, and some of the questions actually will be asked to the panelists and also the presenter. So you can use the QR code. You need to zoom your camera so that you can be able to get the link. So use the camera for that purpose. Thank you very much for that. Let me invite some more members of these panels. The next one in this is Professor Peter Msofe, the Director of Higher Education at the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. Let's clap for him while he comes to the podium. Thank you very much. Please take your seat. And the third one is going to be the Chief Commercial Officer of CRDB Bank, Mr. Boma Rabala. Welcome, and we clap for him also. But I think we should also have the presenter also as part of the panel, or maybe he can come when we open up for discussion, but you can also take a seat. Because some of the discussion which popped in came in from the angle of policy, and as we know that the Loans Board works under the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, and the ministry is the key government entity which is responsible for policies in the education, including higher education, but also financing for higher education, and more specifically financing for students in higher education. So Professor Msofe, the directorate which you are linking or you are leading within the ministry is more or less linked to this particular subject or issue. So we would like to hear from you what are the policy perspectives, but also how is the ministry prepared also to support this process, considering what we have already heard in the presentation, but also during the opening ceremony in terms of challenges, but also the future prospects of this particular sector, and now going forward. So I would like to give you some 5 minutes to reflect on that so that we can also go on with the discussion. Karibu sana, Prof.
Thank you very much, Moderator. I think all the organization that went into this is a big event. Congratulations, Bill and your team. This is something that is really very important. Now, getting Tanzanian into higher education is recognized as one of the necessity in the development of the nation. So the government is looking at getting everybody who has the qualification into higher education. And the government recognized further that higher education is costly, and some who qualifies may not be able to foot the bill to go in the university. That is why the government has set out, first of all, the Higher Education Student Loans Board Act. So everything that goes into supporting higher education financing at the moment is guided by the act of a parliament, meaning that it is something that is statutorily recognized as important, because if it's not important, it's not in, it won't be in the act, but it's in the act, meaning that the government has full support on that. But then, from time to time, this act has been amended to bring in new information that is important in making sure that we continually support financing of higher education. But every year, the regulation that guide the loan disbursement is go through a process of review to ensure that new facts are brought in and redundant facts are left out. So all those show that the government is highly involved, is highly cognizant of the fact that it is important to get Tanzanian into higher education. But then, after a period of 20 years of operation, it was an opportune time for the Loans Board to undergo a comprehensive review of both form and function. Now, the reason that that was undertaken was to make sure that, number one, that the existing form still hold. 20 years is a long time. But also, are the functions still valid, or do we need to do something else? Now, when that study was completed, there was a new direction coming up, a new direction of transformation of the Loans Board into a fund. Now, that transformation required the government to go further and say, oh, we already have a fund for education. Does it suffice to take over the function of the board? Now, that study, the second study that was done on studying the Tanzania Education Authority, has just been completed. So now the government will come up now with a decision what will be the best to go in the next 20, 50 years to come. So if you look at this carefully, you see that the government has an appetite in ensuring that there is adequate financing in the higher education sector. And you see that the government is fully supporting the existing Loans Board, but is also supporting transformation into something that is more sustainable, something that will bring in some new funds. Apart from the central government budget, we are now looking at the possibility of bringing in new funds from elsewhere to support students, to support higher education financing. So from the policy regulatory perspective, we are on a very solid ground to ensure that student financing, higher learning financing is something that is going to be sustainable, and it will bring more people into the business. Because although we are talking about 800,000 plus, but we are still just scratching the surface. Our gross enrollment ratio is still very low. We are not even 10%, and we're aiming at going up to at least 12, 15%. So we still need a lot of more room into higher education. So we still need a lot of financing into higher education. That's why the projection that were provided also from the comprehensive review provide a very good guidance of how much is required. And this is all because the government has the appetite in supporting that. I'll stop that.
Professor, thank you very much. And I could see the vision and the direction of the ministry in this perspective to ensure that every young Tanzania in need of financing gets access to the service, and you are giving directives to the Higher Education Loans Board to do that. You are supporting it, and you are working on the policy space. And maybe if you can confirm, so you innovated the scholarship for those with merits in some of the science areas, the Samia Scholarship, and you entrusted that to the Loans Board. So you didn't want to start a new entity to handle that scholarship. It is within the loan. That means that you trust the board to give it the mandate also to coordinate that. Is that correct?
That's very, very correct. That's actually another reason to know that the government believes in the abilities of the Loans Board, the current Loans Board. That's when we started the Samia Scholarship, the government did not even think twice to bring in a new player, but just handed it over to the Loans Board because They have everything. They have the experience and the expertise to manage funds. And as Dr. Billy presented, we're in the third year and we are doing very, very well. So that's another, another vote of confidence that the government has on the loans board.
Thank you, Prof. I can come back to you with some questions which will pop from the digital platform, but also from the floor when we open up. For now, I'll go to Dr. Peter Murray. Your position is rather more responsible for the day-to-day activities related to loans and the disbursement and financing itself. So maybe you can take us through a few technical issues which you go through, and maybe some of the technical strategies which you have to ensure that the process is more efficient, just on top of the strategic issues which were presented by the executive director during his presentation. Please, Karibu for a few minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Other than the operational challenges in terms of managing resources vis-a-vis the demand in terms of the allocation that we get in yearly basis, maybe I touch into two critical operational issues that we find them of great concern. One is the absence of centralized information infrastructure, public information infrastructure. And this is critical because given the limited resources that we have, we are required to verify the eligibility criteria for the applicants. And one among others is the citizenship as well as the financial ability of the applicant. So most of these students, they are normally, they get into university, some of them are below 18. And you find that they don't have the national identification number, but over and above that, they are coming from families that doesn't have databases of economic profile of their parents. For that reason, it's very operationally challenging to determine the extent of need of the applicant so that we prioritize the limited resources that we have. So if there's an area that we want to improve in terms of operational efficiency, is how to engage and collaborate with all the stakeholders that are responsible with public information systems, the likes of NIDA, the National Identification Authority, the likes of the National Bureau of Statistics, who conducts household survey. They have economic profiles of individuals and households. So how we can tap into that data in determining the most needy applicant. But over and above that, as you all understand, Tanzania is a big country, and over 60% of our population resides in rural areas where even people, when they die, they don't even have death certificate before burial. So even proving that this applicant is an orphan or this applicant doesn't have known parents is a bit challenging for people who are in rural and peri-urban areas. So we are critically affected in terms of operations, and we are looking forward to engage with the relevant stakeholders to beef up our operations in those aspects. And another challenge that we experience in terms of operation is the CEO has highlighted in terms of the tracing challenges. But I will amplify that, taking into account that Tanzania still has a significant portion of the informal sector. And majority of these, they are in rural areas, but those who are even in urban, some of them, they are entrepreneurs, but they are not registered. So because of the informality, you find it is very hard to trace the beneficiaries for repayment. And our loans grant students, students 2 years moratorium period for not paying, and then they're supposed to pay loans for 10 years. So we'll find some of the defaulters have over 12 years of default, and we're struggling to trace them. But to address the question of unemployment, for those whom we trace, they are willing to pay, but they don't have the ability to pay. We are partnering with some stakeholders in terms of upskilling their capabilities to improve their employability so that they can be employed and be able to repay. And the one last thing that I want to share is on the striking a balance between equity, national priorities, and merit. This is the debate because in the perspective of politicians, they would say it's the responsibility of the government to serve every Tanzanian. And on the other hand, given the limited resources, we are supposed to choose whether priority should be considered for students with high performance, as well as students who have admission in programs that are of national priority. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter Murray. I think I'll come back to you with some additional questions which are popping in from the eager comments system. I'll now go to Mr. Boma Rabala. Being in the management and the leadership of one of the leading financial institutions, if not the actually leading financial institutions in the country, and in this morning during the discussion, there was a lot of emphasis that the private sector financial institutions should actually pop in to collaborate with the Higher Education Loans Body, as we see the demand is increasing, and of course there's an opportunity for also institutions like yours also to come in. So what have your institution, the CRDB Bank, done, and maybe what are you planning to do to join hands with the Higher Education Loans Bond to ensure that all Tanzanians are getting access to the financing in higher education services access? Karibu sana, Mr. Rabala.
Asante. Yeah, Chairman of the board, our CEO, Director General for Higher Education Student Board, Dr. Bill Kiwia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. Yeah, just to start, I really like to take this opportunity to really thank you so much for having CRDB on this particular panel. For those who do not know CRDB, we are the largest financial institution by the market capitalization. We are 30 years experience in this particular market. We are registered in the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange, and we are here in Tanzania. We also operate in Burundi for over 10 years, and we have also started our operation in Congo. And we are really proud, actually, to be part of this big organization. And prior to me proceeding to respond to some of these questions, please allow me to really thank you so much and congratulate the board of directors and the Director General for the great work of the past 20 years. We are very much happy to see this development because I've also been part of the beneficiary of the loan board, and I'm grateful that you have made me where I am today. The good news is that I've already paid my loan, so very much appreciative for that. So just to respond on the question that has been made, I think over the past 20 years, we have seen a very transformative strategic partnership between CRDB as a financial institution and what Loan Board has been able to do. And we are really grateful for the great partnership that we have had over time. And on this particular partnership, we have changed together the cause of our economy. We have supported a lot of good initiative. We started by creating a system that will enable and avoid the manual usage for the loan board. We worked together to administer the loans to support higher education student loan board. We also decided to work together on onboarding students that are benefiting out of the loan board. And by this, despite the fact that some of the students were not only using CRDB, but we were able to integrate and being able to provide payment services to all the students across the board from CRDB. So it was actually one of the things that we have been very much proud in terms of this strategic partnership that we have done with the loan board. The second thing which we are also very much proud, and on our assessment, we are really grateful to be part of this particular initiative, is how we have been able to support different students who are actually going to join to universities. Maybe in this particular room, we might not have a very clear understanding of what really happens. There are two important things. One, the people or the students that are actually being supported by higher education student loan board, sometimes they cannot even afford to have initial funds to do registration before they are being offered the funds from the board. So as the CRDB, we came up with a good product which we called Uniloan. This is the interest-free loan that aims at supporting the students during the registrations. As long as we are aware, basing on the tapping environment through APIs, that confirms that these will be beneficial of the loans board fund. So we give to a maximum of 350 Tanzanian shillings to enable those preparatory or the initial cost without charging them any additional amount so that they can facilitate the registration process. And once that is done, it really enables them to go in and start accessing the facility. Isn't that good as a way of supporting the student? The second thing that we have done, allocation of the funds really depends on how government collections take place. But the funds that the board is giving to our young Tanzanians are not only going to wait, they have to continue eating, they must buy books. So as a creative way, within those 2-3 days before the disbursement that can be done, we also came up with a very good product which we called Boom Advance. What is a Boom Advance? Boom Advance is basically a bridging finance within those 2 to 3 days where there is a transaction moved from the government accounts to loan board account before disbursement to enable our young Tanzania to have access to food, to have access to books, and all other necessary equipment to support them on their daily needs. So this is also something that we feel it was really creative to support the young Tanzanian, and at the same time, we have really opened doors in terms of the financial inclusion. Moving from when person received the funds, keeping it on his pocket or our pocket, to allow them to utilize it slowly it being within our banking accounts. And this has been an amazing opportunity because we have also took this opportunity as a way of educating our fellow Tanzanians at early age that they don't need to keep money within their pockets. Their money can be safe with the banks. But beyond that, the other item which is very critical in my own assessment is how we are able to continue supporting the loan board in terms of collections. I have heard here Dr. Bill mention the challenges that they are experiencing. 70% is what they are able to collect. They have continued putting very nice strategy on how they are able to improve. But with what we are able to do is to create more facilitation through fueling the economy in different sectors so that people are able to get other jobs. We can facilitate in a lot of manufacturing companies. We are continue building economy into agri-sector. The moment these people are able to access money, at the same time they are able to repay their loan bonds. But at the same time, we are sitting at the strategic point where we are able to facilitate collections through our banking account so that we can make the process more efficient. And further, we have also had a number of discussions with Dr. Bodi on how we are able also to support recovery processes, because this is an area where financial institutions like CRDB can really provide more of a guidance and additional comfort to the banks, to the loan board. So, long story short, we believe we as CRDB, we are able to play a major role, and we have started additional discussion on how we are able to create additional funding that will support the growth of our fellow Tanzanians through these particular loans, so that we are able to really increase the size, the amount, and of course, the reaching out of many other students. That is in brief. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Boma, for such insightful areas which you have contributed. Later on in the Q&A, you will reserve this question from me. If CRDB is one of the employers which have some collaboration or engagement to ensure that your employees who are former beneficiaries of the loan board are also repaying, you can keep that, and then during the Q&A, you can answer that question if possible. Now I open up to the floor to ask questions. You can raise your hand. The ushers will have some microphones. I'll just take a round, maybe of 4 questions. You introduce yourself and be brief, state the question, but you can also mention to whom are you directing the question, whether it is Dr. Bill, Professor Msofe, Dr. Mari, or Mr. Rabala, and then you say. So I already see a hand there. Please give him the mic. There's another one in the middle there. I think there's a hand also on my right side and the other one. So I already have 4 questions. Can we get the microphones to these people quickly? Please assist, ushers. Meanwhile, while we wait for the first person to have a mic, I have some questions from the eager system. One asking on the ministry side, how does the ministry prepare to ensure that also the provision of these loans are helping creating entrepreneurs rather than only employees, if this is like a strategic area for consideration. I think there's a question specifically for Dr. Mari, why most students do not receive tuition fee but rather meal and accommodation. There was a question of that nature. There's a question for Dr. Kiwia also. Does HESLB has a vision to expand its support to Tanzanian who wants to study abroad? So those are the questions which at least I received from the system. So if the first person to raise the hand has the mic, please go ahead. You be as brief so that we save time. Karibu.
Asante. Thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate you First of all, the CEO, DG of Loans Board for a good presentation. Then Dr. Peter Murray, who operates day by day the activities of Loans Board. My question or suggestion goes to those two because they touched it. You said in socio-economic considerations, sometimes you get problems or challenges to...
So if you don't mind, please introduce yourself by name and the institution you come from. Thank you.
Myself is Samuel Irira. Yes. You had challenges to provide loan in regarding the needs-based, merit-based, or national priorities. I think this is a very challenging situation, especially in loan board. So my question is, how are you going to handle it? Because one of your suggestions is to join network, I think, with institutions like NIDA and other institutions. But I'd also suggest that maybe you take initiatives to get information from the local government, for example, the district commissioner and other authorities down there so that you can get enough socio-economic information of each household. I think that is very important because I can see it's very challenging.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much.
And the suggestion. Asante sana. The next one, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm Athman Salmin, the President of Student Government from St. Joseph University, College of Health and Allied Sciences. Okay. I have a question direct to CRDB. Like, we used to see the beneficiary from CRDB get disbursement earlier than other banks. What could be the advanced technology that you are using maybe, which makes you to be the first in disbursement compared to others? That's the first question. But also, you said like the student before getting allocation, they are able to get 350,000 shilling so that to enable them to continue registration, which is very okay, and I congratulate you. But my opinion is like, if you could see another way of increasing that amount, because for the private institution, it's a little bit less to even allow them to do registration. That's my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I saw a hand on that side, 1 or 2. So we have those ones, and then we come back to the panelists for the sake of time. Thank you.
My name is Godfrey Gilagu, General Secretary of Tailiso. I have 2 comments or my observation. Number 1 is directing to Dr. Billy and at the same time to Professor Msofe. I have seen where we are coming from and where we are going. But how do we see at the Ministry of Education and Loan Body to look the future of the students instead of investing a lot of money to the field research? Because through research, it is where they are going to provide the solution sometimes to the government and even to the challenges to the community. So I see that the loan board and the Minister of Education should come up with the good way of having funding students going for field research. Number two is, in rural areas, it is where many Tanzanians are living. Students from rural areas, sometimes they come to fail to get the information about the loan board. So I think now it is a time maybe the PPP and sometimes loan board to cooperate together and then go to rural areas, secondary schools, Form 4, sometimes Form 3, because for those who are finishing Form 4, sometimes they're going for vocational training, VETAs. So they don't know the procedures and whatever, the procedures of applicants to go for application of loan board. And even for Form 6, it is once they come to finish their studies, it's a time when they come to know that there is a loan board and what are the procedures. So my comment is, maybe it is a good time for loan board through regional offices to go to rural areas and help those students to have the knowledge before finishing to schools.
Thank you,
so
Mr.
much.
Secretary General. Next to you, I think there's a lady who also raised a hand. Please give him the microphone, just next to the last speaker. Karibu, madam.
I salute you in the name of United Republic of Tanzania. My good names are Maua Sarungi. I'm a health commissioner from Tanzania Higher Learning Institution Student Organization. First of all, I would like to ask a permission to use Swahili so as I can present this, what I've prepared very well.
Karibu, sawa.
Asante.
Ila uwe brief, please.
Sawa.
Asante.
Nina ushauri kwa bodi ya mikopo na wizara ya elimu. Kama ambavyo ada inalipwa moja kwa moja kutoka bodi kwenda vyuoni, kwa nini hili swala tusiliweke kwenye upande wa bima ya afya kwa wanafunzi wanaonufaika na mkopo? Kwa sababu gani ninaomba hili? Hii ni kwa sababu kuna maelekezo yalitoka ni lazima wanafunzi wote wa elimu ya juu wawe na bima ya afya. Na kuna changamoto ya wanafunzi wengi kutokulipa bima ya afya kwa wakati. Kwa hiyo tuliangalia hili katika kuimprove sera za kuweza kuhakikisha hili, zile pesa kama ada zinavyolipwa, basi na bima ya afya itengwe pesa ilipe moja kwa moja NHIF. Nasema hili kwa sababu gani? Tunaweza tukawekeza kwa wanafunzi. Wanafunzi hawawezi kusoma kama afya zao haziko sawa. Na tunaweza tukajikuta tunaingia wanafunzi wengine wanaumwa, wengine wakapoteza maisha. Pesa zitalipwa na akina nani, na ili hali tushapoteza watu. Kwa hiyo ushauri wangu ndio huo, naomba kuwasilisha. Asante.
Thank you very much for good and brief questions. So now I close the question side. I open up now back to the panel, and I think you will have an opportunity to respond briefly, but also do any concluding word because our time is already over. So maybe I can start from the end there with Dr. Kiwia, and then we come back to Professor. Karibu sana, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Master of Ceremony. I have two questions and one suggestion. Let me start with the suggestion saying that we have taken on board. However, for the case of national health insurance, for the students who are taking Samia scholarship, who are under Samia scholarship, the package for the Samia scholarship includes NHIF. But for the side of a loan, it does not include NHIF. So this is a suggestion. We have taken it on board. In terms of there was a question about a vision to support students abroad. We used to provide that. I'm saying we used to because currently we have temporarily stopped. And the reason is we are reassessing the priorities, and also we are reassessing also the strength as well. Because a program abroad could incorporate 10 programs in the country. So the engagement and the commitment has to be deeply thought. So we are reassessing that, but we shall resume, hopefully in the future. So it's something which we are still thinking on how to approach it. In terms of another question is, someone asked about research and why don't we allocate for field and research. We do. I remember I have mentioned in the presentation that we have 5 packages, and one of them include field and research. But again, we go back to the funding. Do we have sufficient fund? And this is a question, sort of like a question posing you to find a solution. I think you understand my point. Yes, what I would like to say to the public is that I have students who want support. You give me the alternative financing. Because why? Once we work together in terms of providing some intervention, we could support them. And I'll give you an example. We have examples in South Africa, we have examples in the other part, for example in Botswana, whereby the private sector comes in and they support areas such as field and research. And for our country as well, we also could use the same approach. As my colleague here from the ministry, Professor Msofa, has mentioned, it is high time now the private sector should come in and give us a support as an alternative way of providing financing. Why this is critical? Because they are the ones who are going to use these experts. So once if they support us in some areas such as field and research, it will be easy for us even to provide, because we have the system in place. So it's easy for them, if they want, they can inject so that we can provide some sort of an intervention. But in terms of our institution, we do have a research and development department, which we constantly continue to improve. But again, it's something which we need to work together to find some solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Professor, please.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you for the question. There was actually 2 questions. One, Dr. Billy has already tackled on research, because my answer would have been the same, that when somebody gets a loan for postgraduate training, that loan involves both the coursework, payment for fees and everything, but also for support of research. But there was also a question about how the ministry is preparing to issue loan for those who are not waiting for jobs, people who actually want to employ themselves. So there are 2 ways that the government is working on this. Number 1 is the loan that is provided now is expected to allow a student to broaden their minds. And once they do that, it opens up opportunities for them to actually seek financing from other sources that can help them build their either career, businesses, or whatever they want to do to earn, and also to employ others. So the loan that is available now can also do that. If you get a loan and you do engineering, your mind has been opened up in engineering, so that now you can go to CRDB or NMB or any other bank and take a loan or compete for grants that are available to be able to establish whatever you want to do in your day-to-day life, or creating employment for yourself and others. But when we went down to provide loans for people who are doing middle cadre education, the diploma, this is also the other way that we are loaning people who will be immediately, the moment they finish, they can actually start working on the skills that they gained. So already there's something that is happening, but we also welcome more ideas on how best we can do this. But already you get your education as a veterinarian, as a doctor, you're already given an eye open on what to do in life. If you are a diploma holder, already you also know you can use that as a springboard to move yourself forward.
Thank you, Professor. But I think also the ministry, through the HEAT project, working on the area of revamping the curriculum, of course, after also reforms in the policy of education to make sure that the curriculum in the higher education sector is becoming more and more competency-oriented. So your team, led by Professor Osea and the other colleagues in collaboration with the World Bank, are making a lot of efforts to make a change in the direction of the higher education sector to make it more competent, which means that the skills which these graduates are going to have will make them self-employed. There will be more and more going on with the current world, and that will make a lot of changes within the industry. I think, Dr. Bill, you have been triggered with that. You want to say something?
Yes, there was a question about information and whether we are collecting some information from the local government. But I think my director, my colleague here, Dr. Mari, can talk about it. So let me give him a chance to talk about it. Thanks.
Asante. Karibu, Dr. Mari. I think that is one of the areas which you will also respond to, the engagement with local government to get information about those who are supposed to repay the loan, but also some of the other things which were directed to you. Welcome.
Yeah, there are two questions directed to me. One is on the how do we improve our means testing process in terms of having alternative information from local government and districts. I just want to assure you that this is the direction that the Loans Board is taking. As I said earlier, that information is key in terms of determining people who have high priority need in terms of financing. So we are looking forward to engage with the local government. They have a database for people with special needs, and they are taking this data from basic education level. People who are going into secondary school as well as primary school, they have a database for that. We have never utilized that database, but we are in talks now that we can tap into that database in terms of reaching our identification process. But over and above that, we are experiencing students killing their parents to circumvent the system so that they look as orphans. So there's a lot of forgeries into their economic conditions. So to address that, having centralized database that are verifiable is a way to go. The other aspect is on financial redress. We all know that giving students money is one thing, but how do they manage the money when they have them in an environment like university is something else. So we are partnering with other stakeholders, including the central bank, to forge programs that would cater for financial literacy for students, at least to influence their behavior toward managing money in terms of personal finance, but also understanding how to navigate through digital financial literacy. We are using digital platform for the application process as well as disbursement process. But for them to easily engage with this platform, they need digital financial literacy. And it's key for us to run this program. So we are ready to partner with whoever has interest in that space so that we can improve their literacy level and make them good partners in terms of managing money.
Okay, finally to Boma. I think there's a couple of issues. You can choose some, maybe not all of them, but yeah, karibu.
Asante. So there was a gentleman at the back there who had requested to know how we are able to make an improvement. I think Dr. Peter has mentioned in terms of the harmonization of the system to make sure that things are really being fast-tracked across the board. And we are happy that our central bank initiated Tanzania Instant Payment. It's called TIPS. This is the method which is a technology that allows payment instantly. So I know we might have experienced some delays in the past, but this is no longer an issue. So it's a history, in short. But we also took your recommendations in terms of how we are able to increase the amount to support the students that are sitting at a private university, and we had started this on year 1, so definitely I have no doubt that my team, my colleagues at CRDB will do more research to see what could be the reasonable amount that we can dish out going forward. And of course, as we are closing this, I really want also to take an opportunity to thank again the board, the management, for trusting CRDB as a bank of choice to continue supporting this specific initiative. I would like to continue affirming that we are so much excited and we are looking forward for the continuing partnership. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to our panelists here in the front. Thank you very much. I can now allow you to take your seats back there. Thank you very much for such nice and insightful discussion. Asanteni sana. So I finished this particular panel. Maybe I can retain. Okay. So there is a link called presentations.iga.go.tz for which you, I think is the one which is used also for registration. Presentations.ega.go.tz. You can get, for example, the presentation which was made by Dr. Bill Kiwia and other presentations, but also you can later on download your certificate for participating in this particular event. So you can go to that, and the code there is 1702 when you get into the IGA system, 1702. So we finished the first presentation and panel. We go to the last one for today, and this one will be chaired or moderated by Dr. Peter Murray. So I hand over now to Dr. Murray to take over for the final presentation and also a panel. Karibu sana.
Once again, good evening, everyone. This is our last presentation for the day. And our presenter is Dr. Martin Chigere. Dr. Martin Chigere is a senior lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam. He's also a researcher in economic development research, but also he sits in the board of directors for HESB. So, Dr. Chigere, you're welcome. Let's put our hands together as we welcome him to take us through the last 1 hour of the day. Please, I would like you to stay because this presentation won't be that long, and I believe we'll finish in good time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Right, so I will be presenting, and as it has already been said, I won't take very long. My topic is on the impact of fee-free basic education policy on higher education students' financing in Tanzania. Au kwa Kiswahili tunataka tuangalie athari za sera ya elimu ya msingi bure katika kufadhili masomo ya elimu ya juu. Before I start, I want to give you some statistics. I'm an economist, by the way, so I'll be giving a lot of statistics today. Our budget for the year 2024-25 was Tanzanian shillings 49 trillion. The education sector was given 6.1 trillion. Out of that, 1.3 trillion went to higher education, with the basic education taking around 4 trillion. So which means higher education is taking about 21% of the total budget in the education sector, and roughly 2% of the total budget. So our question here is, and as we will see, can we continue sustainably depending on the government financing higher education? I will also want you to also have this in the back of your minds, that actually the majority share of the financing to higher education students goes into meals and accommodation. Now I'll start my presentation, which will have majorly 4 sections: the introduction, the objectives of this work, the data and methods which we used, as well as the findings, and then we'll give conclusions and recommendations. Now, as I started saying and showing you in the statistics which we have in terms of expenditures, education is key to the development of any nation. And because this builds the human resource, which is one of the key factors in any production activity. Economists estimate it to be around 33% in terms of contribution in any production, the contribution of human capital. Now, recognizing that there have been global efforts to ensure that there is universal primary education, starting with the World Conference on Education in 1990 and then 2000s, which wanted all the nations to have universal education, primary education. The Dakar Framework for Action, taking down what was decided in the global level to Africa, and this was done in 2000 and again 2015. And all these are coming into place because actually we had not achieved the target for having universal primary education. The Millennium Development Goals and currently the Sustainable Development Goals are all emphasizing on education. Being, especially for most of the developing countries, is focusing first on having universal primary education. And these same commitments have also been adopted in Tanzania, starting with the Musoma Declaration in 1974, which also aimed at having universal primary education up to 7 years. But we also have primary education development program funded by the World Bank, which was looking at 3 things: access, allocation, and utilization of resources in education. And then we also have the National Strategy for Growth and Reduction of Poverty, famously Mkukuta. We know them Mkukuta 1 and 2, and they have clusters which are focusing on social well-being, education being part of which means we have also integrated these into our strategies and plans. And the mentioning of the fee-free basic education in the 2014 education policy, which clearly stated that our basic education should be free. Now, the 2014 education policy introduced fee-free basic education, which meant that every child would have access to free and contributions-free basic education. Because sometimes we might exclude the fee but still have the contributions. It removed everything from the fees to the contributions, with the aim of actually increasing the inclusivity of children who are in the vulnerable situations such that they might not be able to access basic education. But it also expanded basic education from 7 years to 10 years, but actually we implemented for some time 11 years. Okay? So which means from primary school to ordinary level secondary education. But now with the revised policy 2023, the basic education is 10 years because we have 6 years of primary education. Okay? So as I said, the aim of all this is first to increase the level of education among our population by increasing the number of years the children are required to stay in school, but to also remove all those constraints, barriers, and the bottlenecks, especially to the vulnerable kids, in attending this basic education. So which means that with the free education now, every kid can go to school. And what this means is that the number of students being admitted to primary schools is also going to increase because now education is free. Now, the implication of this free basic education policy is that proportionally, more funds in the education sector will be allocated to basic education because you have to support all these children who are getting this education for free. And this has a possibility of crowding out the amount of funds or amount of money which goes into higher education. There is a possibility of that happening. But it also increases the number of students, first who are eligible, because for you to go into higher education, you have to also pass through these other lower levels, which means primary school, secondary school, and then you'll go into higher education. Now, if we have this free education up to Form 4, then it means that you have brought all these children closer to higher education, which means you are increasing the number of children who are eligible to higher education. But it also increases aspirations among children into going into higher education, because after them being educated, they'll get to know the importance of education, the benefits of education, and they will aspire to get higher education. That being said, it means that the number of students going into higher education then is going to increase simply because more are eligible and more are inspired. Now, higher education is important because it's the one which is expected to give professionalism to most of the graduates, okay? It is equally important that it is also adequately financed, just as it is for the basic education. But it is also the level at which, in most cases, we compete against other countries. We don't see much of the competition when it comes to lower levels of education. Basically, we don't even think much about that, okay? But when we are producing graduates who are professional, we know that they are going to meet other professionals from other countries, and they'll have to compete for job positions and any other kind of undertakings they have after their graduations. So there have been debates in this. First, the debate that the lower education is more important, and so more financing should go into these levels of education, and it makes sense. But also because it has been shown in scientific research that basic education has higher returns compared to higher levels of education, but it is also still debatable because not all studies have shown that this is the case. But another thing is that it is perceived, or it is like that it tends to be relatively underfunded. So then the aim of this study was then to analyze the impact of free basic education policy, or the implementation of this policy, on higher education financing. Specifically, looking at the effect on the prospective number of higher education students, also the amount of funds which is needed to support these students in their higher education, but also provide possible recommendations. Now, in terms of data, we use data from the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, Tanzania Commission for Universities in terms of higher education, and also data from the Higher Education Students Loans Board in terms of how much is being funded, the proportions of the applicants who are funded, and so on. And mainly what we do is to conduct the trends analysis and the projections of these numbers in different aspects, as I will present soon. Now, in terms of projection, what we did is to first look at the primary school cohort, which is under fee-free education. And this fee-free education policy effectively started being implemented in 2016 in January during the regime of President Magufuli. Okay, so all those who started Standard 1 in that case were offered free education. But this also goes up to lower secondary school, which means it was also free in terms of fee. So we have then this cohort which started in 2016, graduating in 2022. That means they started Form 1 or secondary education in 2023. And we are going to see this in the number. Actually, we see that there was an increase in the number of students graduating in Standard 7 and those who started Form 1 during this period, reflecting the very initial impacts of this policy. But we are expecting that these students will complete ordinary level secondary school education in 2026. That is simply next year. And then they will join A-level in 2027. And in 2029, they will be joining the universities or the higher education. Okay? Now, in terms of the parameters which we used in the projections, we had the conversion of Standard 7 students who will enter into secondary school education. We know that not everyone goes into secondary school. You have to pass the first bottleneck, which is the national examination of Standard 7. And then we have the completion rate. Once they have entered secondary school, they have to reach Form 4 and complete. And then there is another exam there, which they have to pass and transit into advanced level. And then after advanced level, again, they have another national examination, which is another hurdle they have to pass and transit into university education. Now, at all these different levels, we had the ratios, the historical ratios of students who had been passing through or transiting through all these different levels, and we use them in the projections of the numbers of students who will be completing and transiting into these different levels in the coming years. Now, quickly going into the findings instead of going deep into the methods and the approaches used, we see here the enrollment in primary and secondary school in the past. What we see is a simple increase of students in 2016, and that's when the policy was effectively implemented. We see that that shift in primary school is actually higher than that in secondary school, and that should make sense because there is no requirement into going into primary school, but there is a requirement into going into secondary school because you have to pass the Standard 7 examination. Though it still increased the numbers. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? So there is a very slight increase in 2016 in the secondary education, but we see this picking up after some years. And this reflects possibly some students who probably would have gone into secondary education, but because they could not pay the fees, so they were left behind. And now they are picked, but there are not many compared to those in primary school because there everyone goes. So the shift in 2016. Now this is in terms of the total enrollment. That means in primary school, Standard 1 up to Standard 7, and for all level from Form 1 up to Form 4. If we particularly, next slide please, if we particularly look at those who were enrolled in the initial years, that is Standard 1 in primary school, we will see this jump very clearly, okay? And we'll see that it goes to both male and female students, which means somehow that possibly we were already done with the hurdle of having the differences between male and female students, but also the same kind of impact between male and female students. And if you look again into the enrollment, the previous slide, please. Yes. The enrollment in Form 1, we will see that there is also again a jump from 2015 to 2016, almost similar between girls and boys, but widening a bit for girls after some years. which shows that there was probably more of a problem to female kids before the fee-free education policy. Okay, next slide, please. Right. Now, when it comes to technical and higher education, one will say roughly there has been an increasing trend, though there has been a decline. Remember, this is not affected by policy, so we are not really interpreting the jumps and the downs which we are seeing here. But what we can see clearly is that starting from 2017-18, there has been an increase in the number of enrollment in higher education. Next slide. Great. So in terms of enrollment in the first year of education, we also see an increasing trend, very similar to what we see in the total enrollment. But again, as I said, this is not affected by the fee-free basic education directly. It could be affected in terms of crowding out, but not directly. Fine. So if we look, next slide, please. If we separate the males and female students, we see now a clear gap between male and female students. It's not the topic for today, but something to ponder. We start the same in primary school, in secondary school. When we reach higher education, a clear gap between male and female students, right? There is something important here, even when it comes into how we are financing these studies, or if it could be something else driving this. Next slide, please. Great. So these are the numbers in terms of completion. So we see a smooth completion increasing over time, basically the same. We are not expecting to see that effect now between 2021, because here those who started with the education policy had not yet graduated their primary school. Next slide. Yeah, so here there are some gaps because the data were missing, but again we also see the increasing trend of completion in secondary schools and increasing in both males and females. And the good thing here, the completion of males, females, goes slightly higher. It's a good thing. If you give girls a chance, then they will complete school, right? But we don't see them in higher education, remember that. Next slide. Now, let's see the projections. We see the spikes in these graphs, and I will explain all of them so that we don't confuse. Right. So let's start with standard 7 completion. Okay, so that is the orange line. So standard 7 completion, we see that there is an increasing trend from 25 to 26, and then a huge jump in 2027. And that, as I said, is not the impact of the fee-free basic education, basically. That is the jump because on that year, we are expecting 2 cohorts to complete the primary school. Okay? So there is a cohort which, because of the revised policy, we are going to have 2 cohorts which are going to complete their primary education together. So that's why we see that number is double what we have now. And that will also extend into the enrollment of Form 1 next year, that is 2028, and that's the number which you see. Okay? Now the same number is also going to happen in 2031, then when these 2 cohorts are completing their Form 4. Okay? It's the new policy, the revised policy 2023. It's not the fee-free basic education. All right? The impact of fee-free basic education we see in the completion of Form 4 in 2026. There is a slight jump, but which is overshadowed by the double cohorts which we have. If I remove that now, those graphs with double cohorts, and assuming that there is only 1 cohort, this number is huge because it moves from around 600,000 students to almost 800,000 students, all right, completing their Form 4. And this is the projection and the impact of fee-free basic education. Next slide. Great. So this then is going to affect the admission into higher education for two reasons which I've already mentioned. First, the eligibility, because these students are going to go up to Form 4 with free basic education. More of them are eligible for A-level, and more of them will then be eligible for higher education, right? But two, because they are aspired, having been educated to that higher level of basic education, and they will aspire to go into higher education. And so we see this impact in 2029. So you see the change in slope from 2028 to 2029, which reflects that impact of fee-free basic education. Now, the one you see in 2034, that is the double cohort. And I believe that my fellows from the higher education students, but also after absorbing the impact of fee-free basic education. Now, what do we project in terms of the financing? Next slide. Right. So these are the numbers, and we simply had two scenarios which I'm going to explain. The first scenario assumes that the amount of funding is the same. Okay, so currently, on average, a higher education student, on average, those who are supported by the Higher Education Students Loans Board, get around 3.2 million per year, per academic year, right? Now, if we go by that amount, right, we'll see what we call the first scenario, okay? And the second scenario imposes a slightly higher amount, 3.5, but also a possibility of growing. And we assume simply that this amount grows over years. We know that there is inflation every year, but not every year that the Higher Education Students Loans Board changes this amount. But we know that after a certain period of time, they will change. Just like 2 years ago when we moved from 8,500 to 10,000, okay? It was an increase of more than 15%, but that's an accumulation of small increases over years, right? So if we look at how much we will need to fund first-year students, we see that in the green color and the red color, okay? So it shows us that around 2025, which is simply the next year, we'll need around 300 billion to finance just first years. But the total financing goes to almost 900 billion this year. Just this year, we need 900 billion. Now, if we go up to 2033, 34, before the double cohorts, we will need almost 2 trillion to finance students. And that is in the year 2033, 34. And after that, we have the double cohorts coming and being sustained for about 3 to 4 years, and they will need almost 3 trillion Tanzanian shillings to be supported. And that's not very far. It's actually 8 years from today, right? We need to more than triple the amount we have today if we still continue depending on that. And here there are other further assumptions then I'll have to explain. In this analysis, we have assumed that the proportion of applicants who are supported by the board will continue remaining the same. But since morning, we have heard here everyone saying that actually everyone needs to get that financing. Everyone needs to be supported. Now, we haven't taken that into account. If we take into account that everyone is supported, this figure will almost go into 5 trillion instead of 3 trillion, right? And I think that is the way we want to go. We want to find the mechanisms where we can support all those students who want to be supported in their higher education. Now, to conclude, currently we are implementing the free basic education, and as we say, it's going to have an impact in terms of the enrollment in primary, secondary, and higher education, right? It's going to expand the number of students who are going into secondary school. It's going to inspire them, and more of them will want to acquire higher education. And projections show that we are going to increase this number largely from 2029 going forward. And that just this year going to need around 900 billion and 3 trillion next year. Now, what do we recommend? First, to optimize the loan repayment systems. Most students are supported. We now the number around more than 800,000 students have been supported. Some of them have declared themselves here, and I should also take that opportunity to also declare that I'm also a beneficiary who has already paid his loan fully. Thank you. All right? So to optimize and make sure that students, all those beneficiaries, repay their loans. And every one of us here is involved in this. You know, sometimes we think that this is only the role of the board, but it's not. Because we are the ones who are living, who know who is in there, who benefited, and we know actually what we have been given. And I would say sometimes we even know that we have to pay even more than what we got. Why not pay even more, right? Public-private partnership can support scholarships, research and infrastructure. There is a role for the private sector to also support in different dimensions, okay? We have mentioned here the financial institutions, but we have so many other institutions which can support. We also have individuals who can support. We have heard of a lot of endowments in other universities in developed countries, and these people are supporting higher education. Looking at other means which the government could finance, probably by maybe setting a special kind of tax or new levies to support, particularly supporting higher education. But we could also, as I said, establish endowment funds. And this actually goes mainly to the universities. To establish endowment funds within the universities which can support higher education. We see this in a lot of universities in the developed countries, especially in supporting graduate programs using different endowments. And this could be from philanthropists, but it could also be from other associations, okay? Income contingent loans as an alternative model, which could also ease the pressures, but also to have targeted scholarship for low-income students, which are aligned with workforce needs. You know that in my company, I will need people from a certain profession. Go and support that profession, right? Because at the end of the day, they are going to benefit your organization. So this could also be a means to support. But to also raise the awareness about sharing financial responsibilities. Sharing financial responsibilities, just as we do in supporting weddings and funerals, right? Kule we raise a lot of awareness. We collect a lot of money. 20 million is not an issue. We support, and people get married as well, right? But we don't do that much in education. So we should raise the awareness that actually if we invest in education, we are investing in something which is more sustainable and which has long-term repayments. And I'll end here in my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Martin, for sharing the facts and statistics. For lawyers in the room, I know my colleague Zaharani has been challenged with the statistics, data, and graph, but this will be ironed soon when the panelists come on stage. So thank you, Dr. Martin, and I'll call you to sit in the panelists because you're going to be among the panelists who will discuss this paper. But I want to highlight a few things before I call the panelists. One is in terms of key takeaways. Dr. Martin is telling us that 98% of the financing goes to basic education and 2% goes to higher education. This is the critical takeaway. The second one being there's an increasing appetite for students to go into higher education. And that has a number of implications, not only financing, but infrastructure and many others. And the third takeaway is, and we all know that Tanzania is now developing its 2050 plan. So in terms of our vision, the estimate says by 2050, Tanzania will be having 118 million population. So now we are currently about 64, 65 million, and we're expected to double in the next 25 years. People normally say, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So we are expected to double in the next 25 years, and it also says, the statistics show, it is 65% of the 118 million population are expected to be youth. So these are the ones who will be aspiring to get into universities. So allow me to call in the panelists Dr. Kasile. Dr. Kasile is the Director of Accreditation at the Tanzania Commission for Universities. He's an economist and also a statistician, so he's going to help those who are struggling with the numbers and interpretation of the same. So Karib sana, our hands together for him, please. May I also call Aikansia Muro. Aikansia Muro is representing the CEO of NMB. Aikansia Muro is the head of personal banking, and among the others, she's responsible to oversee access to finance for youth. So personal banking includes students, and she's in the forefront of reaching students in terms of having access to accounts, but also maintaining those accounts in transactional life in their academic lifestyle. So we are going to have a round of questions to the panelists. I'll start asking them questions, and later I'll give an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. We'll have our ushers walking around there to see if there's any raise of hand once I call upon for you to show up, and I would kindly request that you be brief, you introduce yourself, and go straight to the question while pinpointing to whom the question is being addressed. So my first question will go to Dr. Kasile. Dr. Kasile here sits as a representative from the Tanzania Commission for Universities, the ones that allow providers of higher education to get into the market, both from public institutions as well as private sector. So maybe, Dr. Kasile, you can tell us and the audience, what does this mean in terms of financing needs for higher education? Because to providers of education, whether at the level of TVET, the technical and vocational education, or at the level of higher education, what does these statistics tell, and what does it mean to them? And the second question to you is, in terms of the academic institutions, and among others, TCU looks over quality of service providers in the education sector, but also the capacity to enroll students. So what is the take of TCU in these specific statistics that have been shared? And to NMB, I understand that NMB is in the forefront of implementing financial inclusion initiative in the country, and education financing being one of them. So specifically, I would want us to know what exactly are you doing on the ground in terms of reaching the unserved and the underserved in terms of education financing? And what does these statistics mean to you as a financier for higher education? And for Dr. Martin, you have to wait for a question that will come from the audience. So, Dr. Kasile, you are warmly welcome to give your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First and foremost, allow me to make a small correction. I'm here at an individual capacity. I know, yes, I'm coming from the Tanzania Commission for Universities, but the views and opinions that I'm going to air in this particular gathering are entirely my own views. They are not necessarily reflecting the views of the Tanzania Commission for University, the institution which I work with. What does these statistics tell us in terms of financing of higher education? It's a very good question. I had the opportunity to read this paper over and over again, and I almost found myself having nothing to comment as far as this paper is concerned. Nevertheless, and to be fair, to you, the organizers of this particular rare event, I will still nevertheless give my views. First, with reference to this particular question, this question has a number of implications to different key stakeholders. Higher education has many complicated stakeholders. The industry is one of the key stakeholders. The government, students, parents, sponsors, they all have interest in higher education. These statistics, to me, they have a number of significant implications. We are thinking of expanding access to higher education, increasing enrollment to higher education. I'm just asking myself, we are focusing on financing of higher education, but to me, it's beyond financing higher education. We look at how are these students who are going to enter into the university, our universities, going to be absorbed in the industry in terms of carrying out their practical training. That is one of the key implications of these statistics. I feel the practical training is one of the key components. It's an integral component of any training. We are speaking of skills. Graduates have to have skills. These skills are acquired from the industry. So when we think of these statistics, we should not focus mainly on financing these students who are going into the university. We have to look at these issues or these statistics in broader terms, in all dimensions. That is one. The second, there is no doubt that the increase in enrollment is going to have impacts in terms of financing of higher education. But one question that comes immediately in my mind is the different financing options. Dr. Chegere offered us with 7 different financing options if we really needed to absorb the right number of students who are going to join the universities in the next couple of years to come. But again, another thing that comes immediately in my mind, we needed to do a bit of deep analysis to establish or to uncover the contributions of each one of these different options. For instance, when we speak of awareness creation to the community, if we do effectively, how much is it going to contribute to financing of higher education, likewise the rest of these options? That is one issue that is critical to me. It's not simply looking at these financing options, but another thing that we need to ask ourselves, probably this question, allow me to pose it to my fellow economist, Dr. Chegere. Probably we need to establish, have we done any sensitivity analysis to establish the effectiveness of these different models that you are suggesting, at least to understand the contributions of each one of these before embark on the implementation of these different options. As a statistician, I would love to see if we can do a deeper sub-analysis to understand the contribution of these different options. Second, in terms of, we know it is a fact that the number of students who are going to jump into the universities is likely to increase significantly. Then a question comes of increasing access. I am aware that the higher education for economic transformation is really doing a great job in terms of expanding access, infrastructure, capacity building, and some other necessary facilities to absorb the expected number of students. So this is one of the mechanisms that we should be looking at as a higher education regulatory authority or agents of the country. We are really looking forward to see that universities are expanding, expecting to absorb the increasing number of students who are going to join the universities. So that is another dimension, not only financing in terms of giving loans, but also the infrastructure. Luckily, the project is doing a great job in terms of expanding access. Comes to the question of course, I've addressed in passively the second question, capacities of universities to enroll. Currently, we have 50 university institutions which are registered in our register of university institutions. Out of these 50, 47 are allowed to offer academic programs. So we expect more university institutions to come in the next few years to expand access. And as a commission, we are working very closely with the investors to see the possibility of expanding access to higher education through different modes of delivery, including we are living in a digital era, a pointed click era. So we are going to use technology to increase access, and we have already the necessary instruments to guide the quality assurance of digital learning and training in our universities. We cannot avoid technology completely in terms of teaching and learning. That is another avenue of increasing access to absorb the expected increasing number of students in higher education institutions. And we are prepared to do the quality assurance, because we don't want somebody to come into the university and earn a degree which is not properly quality assured. Allow me probably to stop here for now, and I'll be ready to respond to more questions which will be directed to me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kasile, for highlighting these key issues. One, a call for looking into the need to finance practical training. And the second one is to extend research in the options proposed, whether the impact expected can be statistically tested and verified. But we have also highlighted the efforts that Tanzania government is implementing through the Ministry of Education, the HEAT project, which is financed by the World Bank, to address some of the issues that are expected to be a concern in the near future. But Dr. Kasile has also highlighted the response at the Commission in terms of increasing access to ensure there's universal access to education, but over and above that, looking into possibilities of leveraging in technology, in adopting e-learning in our universities. So maybe I allow Dr. Chegele to respond on the statistical inquiry before I allow NMB to also respond.
Thank you, moderator. Let me first start by correcting if I made this mistake when I was presenting. So what I said is the education sector was allocated around 6 trillion 1.3 went to higher education, which is 21% of the allocation in the education sector. So I heard you mention something like 2, it's not. So 2 is the percent of the total budget of the country, not the percent of the education budget.
Thank
right.
you.
So, yeah, there have been some issues which Dr. Kasile has raised. One is to go beyond the financing, which I agree 100%. It's just the focus of this work was more on financing. But I think I started teasing out some of these things which are actually not part of the financing. Okay, so for example, how will the students be absorbed? The issue of having the double cohorts, the facilities we have at our universities, not just about the practical trainings, but we have classes, we have labs, accommodation, and so on. So there are a lot of things which come into play in this case. And as you'll see that there is a role to play even beyond the education sector itself, okay? Those who are absorbing students for practical training, these cut across different areas. Those who are financing, the establishment of accommodation for students, we shouldn't continue expecting that our universities will continue building hostels for students. There is an opportunity even for other entrepreneurs to find this as an opportunity to invest. I agree again with Dr. Kasile on expanding more on the financing options to see which one will contribute more, but also the effectiveness of each model which is proposed here. And it's true that the paper which I presented here did not go deep into the analysis of these options, but I think that is something which could be done, of course, together with TCU, Higher Education Students Loans Board, to look at how this could be analyzed. And lastly, he talked about how the universities, at their capacity in their institution, TCU, in terms of absorbing this, the HIT project. I also come from the university, so I know the HIT project is building a lot of facilities, but also more importantly on the digitization of our programs. And I think, to me, that is also the way to go. In reaching out more of the population outside there which needs this higher education. Simply just as we do in the basic education, where we want to reach everyone, we should also have a plan to reach everyone who wants to have higher education.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Chegele, for highlighting that and correcting the allocation of the higher education budget to be 21%. So I can say you're welcome to give the experience from NMB in terms of access to finance to youth.
Thank you, Moderator Dr. Mari. First of all, it's important for me to also declare that I'm among the first beneficiary of Loans Board. And reflecting from the presentations which have been done since morning and the one that has been done by Dr. Chegere here, it makes me appreciate that I was really privileged to have enjoyed the loan during those days. And my second declaration is I'm coming from an organization which is really compliant. That was the question which was asked by the previous moderator. So he wanted us to comment whether our organizations are also compliant in terms of making sure that we are submitting or we are deducting the loans back to the Loans Board. I'm saying this because immediately after joining NMB Bank 18 years ago, the bank started to deduct my salary and remit back to the Loans Board. That shows its commitment, and it has remained the case since that day till date. Now, you have asked us to clarify what we have been doing and our contribution to increase the penetration to underserved students who are aspiring to join the university in this country. Now, I will cite the 3 key strategic initiatives that the NMB Bank has so far implemented successfully, which have significantly also increased the number of students who are eligible to get the loans. Now, to start with the public-private partnership, NMB in the past 2 years, we entered into collaborations with the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, and we came up with a loan which is called Elim Loan, a loan which is given to eligible students who are aspiring to attend higher education, but also those who are trying to get this technical education and diploma. Again, in this arrangement, banks set aside amount of Tanzania shillings 200 billion, significant amount which is aiming to finance this arrangement. And these loans are given at a very concessional rate of 9%, a lower rate compared to the market rate given to other loans products which are given at the bank. This is among the key initiatives that the bank has initiated. I will also cite the second most important development or milestone that the bank achieved. In year 2023, also the bank entered into collaboration with the Loans Board to integrate in its new digital platform for loans disbursement. This was a very, very strategic initiative, and I would say that I must congratulate the Loan Board for this initiative, because now students don't have to wait till they come to the universities to start the process. They have just to start the application of the loans application to the places where they are. And now NMB being the largest bank with the footprint of over 230 branches across the country, we are almost in all the districts, and we have over 50,000 agents who are representing us across the country. This gives an opportunity for students who are even staying in remote areas such as Katavi, Majimoto area, to apply loans in specific areas where they don't have to travel. They can open an account from NMB branch, wherever they are, and they can access this system and be able to apply for their loans. Now, this increases the number of students who are reaching out to the Loans Board to qualify and apply for the loans. And finally, in initiative to increase the number of eligible students, through our foundation, we have an NMB Foundation. We came up with a program which is called Nuriangu Sponsorship and Mentorship Program, where the bank has set aside Tanzania shillings 1 billion, aiming at supporting or providing sponsorship to students who are bright, but they are coming from the I would say, underprivileged financially. So these students are able to be sponsored by the bank fully in terms of school fees and everything that they need for their pursuit of higher education. And at the moment, there are about 130 beneficiaries who are enjoying this sponsorship. And I would like to say that this is not the end of it, because as we continue to grow this fund, more and more students will continue to benefit from this sponsorship and mentorship program. Now, coming to the students who are already at the universities, we have been able to also come up with digital solutions for them to apply loans using their mobile phones without a need to visit any branch. And these students just need to have an account with us. They can access a loan of up to 1 million, where they can meet their short-term financial needs. These are key initiatives that the bank has already implemented, and we are committed to make sure that we will continue to invest on the youth to make sure that we are reaching and we are increasing the number of students who are qualifying to go to the universities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our hands together for Ikancia. So 3 key things she shared is the 200 billion that is set aside for Tanzanians to go and borrow for financing. And this is given at a 9% interest below the market rate. but also the improvement in the digital disbursement solution, as well as the scholarship they provide for vulnerable students. So kindly use the link to send your questions. I assure you that I am getting the questions from the people responsible to collect them. But may I allow now those who have specific questions to either the presenter or our panelists. So you just raise your hand where you are. We'll see you, and the usher will bring you a microphone for you to give your question. So by a show of hands, we'll be able to see you. Yes, we have two hands at the middle. I hope you have seen them. Yes, so we start with that one and those two. Someone else take the microphone to those two colleagues there. Yes, sir, you're welcome. Yeah. So you introduce your name and the institution you are coming from and a specific question to whoever you are directing.
My name is Yusuf Ismail Koleleni, a professor of physics.
Can you raise your voice? Some people are not able to hear you.
Yes, my name is Yusuf Ismail Koleleni, a professor of physics from MUM. I was asking myself a question that all these 20 years, the loan board has received I was asking myself a crazy question that for 20 years now, loan board has been receiving money from the government, and the number of students have been increasing year after year. Now, suppose that the government decides not to give the loan board money after the next 20 years. Has the loan board set, or can it sustain itself after that time? That's my question.
You didn't say to whom the question is directed, but if not specific, then I can choose any of the panelists to respond.
My question is directed to the speaker, Mr. Martin, as well as the loan board, the TCU officer.
Oh, thank you. So, Dr. Chegere will respond that. There, we have two colleagues there, yes?
Okay. Kwa majina naitwa Marco Njile, ni waziri mkuu wa serikali ya wanafunzi kutoka Chuo Kikuu cha Afya na Sayansi Shirikishi Muhimbili. Mimi nina ushauri au nina ombi kwa Dr. Martin, ni kwamba wewe ni daktari wa uchumi na umeonyesha statistic na trends za namna wanafunzi ambao wanasaidika na bodi ya mikopo. Na kupitia huo udaktari wako wa uchumi, umewashauri nini HESLB na Wizara ya Elimu kwa ujumla kuhusu masuala ya mikopo? Mpaka sasa wanafunzi still bado wengi hawajapata mikopo. Lakini bali na hilo, haswa mwaka wa kwanza na mwaka wa pili. Bali na hilo, nilikuwa na ushauri pia kwa mkurugenzi wa bodi ya mikopo Dr. Kiwia, kwamba kwenye swala la Samia Scholarship nilikuwa na shauri ichukuliwe cumulative GPA badala ya GPA the semester by semester. Kwa mfano labda kwamba mtu amemaliza mwaka wa kwanza, anyo GPA ndo inachukuliwa kama GPA ambao inamuondoa kwenye Samia Scholarship. Ushauri wangu ni kwamba ni bora huyu mtu asome kutoka mwaka wa kwanza, mfano labda anasoma shahada ya udaktari, asome mwaka wa kwanza mpaka wa 5, ile cumulative GPA ndo iamuru sasa kwamba huyu mwanafunzi awe na nani, awe na scholarship au aingizwe moja kwa moja kwenye makato baada ya nani? Asante.
So for the benefit of those who didn't hear, the question is directed to Dr. Martin, requesting and highlight of what are the recommendations to the government and the ministry in particular. But I recall that Mr. Martin gave recommendations, so I think maybe the one who is asking question didn't pay attention to the same, but the papers will be shared and the recommendations are there. And the second one was the advice to the CEO of HESB in terms of improving the Samia Scholarship product. And I think that one is taken because the CEO is around there. So may I allow another question from, yes?
Kwa majina naitwa Tariq Rashidi, ni waziri wa mikopo chuo kikuu cha kimataifa cha Kampala. Nimewasikia presenters wakipresenti takwimu mbalimbali kuhusiana na loans in association with education. Mimi binafsi nimefanya research ndogo tu ya kwamba drop out ya wanafunzi katika vyuo vikuu, nikimaanisha wale ambao wana terminate kusoma chuo na wale ambao wana postpone, kwa sasa hivi ni 60% ya ambao wanafanya hivyo ni wanufaika wa mikopo. Nikiwa na maana gani? Ukiangalia mwaka 2023, 2024 na pamoja na 25, utaratibu umebadilika kabisa ukikompea na miaka nyuma ya hapo, ya kwamba miaka ya nyuma kiacha 2023, 24 na mwaka huu, 100% ya tuition fee ilikuwa 3,100,000. Hii ilikuwa inatufavor wanafunzi hata ukiwa unasoma chuo cha private ambaye ada zetu kidogo zimechangamka, 5,000,000 na zaidi mpaka 7,000,000.
Can you be brief? What is the question? What is the question?
Yes, my questions ni kwamba nataka nitoe advice kwa mkurugenzi wa bodi ya mikopo kwamba tunaomba sisi kama wanafunzi waturudishie ule utaratibu wetu wa kwamba 100% irudi pale kwenye 3,500,000 na sio ile 500,000 ambao wanatupa sasa hivi. Wanafunzi wengi hawatimizi malengo yao na wanaacha masomo. Asante.
Okay, that is noted is an advice to consider 100% financing of tuition fee. So it's a proposal to the CEO and the government to consider 100% tuition fee financing. So I have two questions from those that are shared to our question portal. One is directed to NMB in terms of what is the role of banks, or what is the role of financial institutions given the trajectory in terms of demand that we have seen in the presentation. And the second question goes to Dr. Kasile. Someone is arguing whether, why are we assuming that everyone is interested to go to higher education? Are there no other options? So maybe you can respond on the same. I can see what should be the role of banks. And Dr. Martin, you had a question. So Dr. Martin, and then I can see, and we'll finish with Dr. Kasile.
Right. Thank you. I have two questions directed to me because I'm seated here in front, but I believe those questions were actually directed to the executive director. So what happens if the government stops funding the higher education students loans board? I think that I could simply summarize that question like that. In the current situation, it will be a disaster. That will be a simple answer. I think in the morning, the executive director talked a bit about the kind of transformations they're looking forward into implementing, but also during his presentation. And he started by saying that this board was established as a revolving fund, the fund which should be able to revolve the amount which has been lent out to beneficiaries, and then collect that money back, forward it to other students in terms of support. But the kind of, the operationalization of it is not that much as one would have expected in terms of making it revolving and sustainable. And that's why he said that a comprehensive review has already been conducted, coming up with suggestions on what should be done and how it should be done, right? Part of which is to make it be able to source funds from different sources and manage them. But he also even talked of other different mechanisms of funding. And this goes into also other questions which have been asked. So another question was on what the ministry should do and what the board should do. I think it goes with what already the executive director has proposed. In terms of, and I will answer that question, though he gave it as a comment, on the possibility of funding 100%. Okay, the reason why economists exist is because of limited resources. If resources were there, everyone would have been financed 100% without even being required to repay. But the resources do not support us. So there should be a mechanism towards which this small cake can be distributed to everyone using different criteria. It has been mentioned the different ways this financing has been carried over time. Even the former president, Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, explained how it was. If you remember, at first it was only for public universities, then it went even to private sector. All these are developments over time, which try to include everyone into being supported by this fund. And then at some point when resources are limited, you have to choose some programs which can be funded 100%, some of which you just be getting proportions. So with the changes, some of them will be taken, but for sure, because the resources are always limited, it won't be really possible to fund everyone 100%. That one we should accept.
Thank you. You're welcome, I can see her.
Thank you, moderator. So I think the question that has been posed to me is similar to what you also asked us. What does this statistics mean to us as a financial institution or as a bank? So for me, I would say that, first of all, these statistics indicate or confirm that NMB has approached this challenge from the right angle. You would look at the initiatives that we have implemented. All of them have been intending to increase the number of students who are able to access the higher level education. From the amount that we have set aside for financing the 200 billion, the Nuru Yangu sponsorship that we have provided, and also our integration with the Loans Board. And that affirms the proposal that has been cited by the presenter, Dr. Chegere, in line of PP initiative, public and private partnership. And the bank is committed to ensure that we continue to invest in this area, and we are affirming our commitment to continue to working together with the Loans Board and the Ministry of Education to further develop solutions which will for sure increase and help the government to lessen the burden that will in the future be there for catering for the higher learning education cost. Maybe if, just in a brief, it's also important to note that the free education initiative of the government is posing a pressure also on the lower level education. Aside from the higher level, even at the moment on the lower level education, this initiative is also posing financial pressure there. In NMB Bank, you will notice that for many years, we have been committing 1% of our profit after tax as our CSI initiative, and the same has been directed to education sector. And we have been pioneering to sponsor and provisioning of school desks and all the necessary equipment, such as the laboratory equipment, the boarding school beds, etc. Just to cite last year, the year 2024, the bank had reached over 70,000 students who have been enabled to afford to sit on the desks. We have been able to reach over 2,500 boarding schools by providing these boarding beds. You will notice that this kind of initiatives, if done consistently, you find that they help significantly improving the well-being of education in our country. And as a bank, and on behalf of the management and the board, I want to assure you that our commitment to the Education Center is affirmed, and we will continue to make sure that we are working together to achieve what is required. Thank you.
Thank you, Ikancia, for elaborating and affirming your commitment into financing of education, but not only in in tuition fees and the like, but also extending the same to infrastructure and as well as the learning materials. So may I allow Dr. Kasile to also respond on the question that was directed to you. It was a general one, but you are okay to see how you can attempt it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. There was, if my correction is correct, there was one question that was directed to me. Why is everybody interested in joining higher education? My boss mentioned this morning, Professor Msofe, the Director of Higher Education, our enrollment in higher education has not even reached 20%, and it's still relatively low compared to our neighbors in the region. Why higher education? At both the micro and the macro levels, people have realized the importance of investment in higher education for socio-economic development. No country has ever developed without investing in human capital development, specifically training its people at higher levels. We cannot speak of development in science and technology, innovations, if we don't train our people to higher levels. So to me, the question probably would be, at what levels? As a country, this requires a debate. People are saying that our pyramid is inverted. We have more degree holders and few those with the technical awards. That requires a debate. No one would love to see his or her children just ending at diploma level. Everybody wants to see his children getting a degree, at least masters and PhDs. So this is something that requires a national debate, whether we should focus on investing at middle level tertiary, at diploma levels, who are the doers, and just maintain a few degree holders who are the ones to work in research and development institutions, policy makers, or we should continue with this trend. But investing in higher education is inevitable as a country.
Thank you, Dr. Kasile, for elaborating that. And Dr. Kasile is posing a question back to us, all of you that are in the room, that this requires a national debate in terms of prioritization, whether we should focus on middle, tertiary education financing, or whether the little we have should be prioritized to higher education, given the aspiration of the country in terms of our economic development plans. We want to remain a middle-income country, fueled by the mining subsector, industry and trade, and oil and gas economy. All this requires a skill set to run those sub-economies. And so if we are calling for a national debate, I don't know whether this evening is enough, but I leave the question to you as you articulate and think how we'll manage going forward. So I am taking a last round of questions from the audience. If there's any, I can allow another 2. So by a show of hands, we have a hand there. Please, ushers, help me to see those hands. There's another hand at the middle on the last 3 rows. Yes, so we start from there. Please, can you pass the microphone to the lady on my left? Okay, as the microphone goes to her, whoever has the microphone, you can start. For those who have raised their hands to ask questions. Okay, so you are lucky that you got the microphone in time.
Asante, good evening. Mimi nipende kuchukua nafasi hii kuwashukuru sana. Mimi sina swali bali nina ushauri. Kwa majina naitwa Doris Achad, ni makamu wa rais mstaafu wa chuo cha usafirishaji NIT. Na ushauri wangu ni kwa bodi ya mikopo pamoja na wizara ya elimu. Kitu cha kwanza, bodi ya mikopo kuhakikisha wanakaa sawa. Tunatambua jukumu kubwa ambalo wanalifanya kuhakikisha wanafunzi wanapata mikopo kwa wakati sahihi. Japo changamoto za wanafunzi ni nyingi sana, hasa kuhakikisha wanakuwa na idadi ya wanafunzi ambao wanaingia vyuoni, especially wanafunzi ambao wanahitimu kidato cha 6. Inasikitisha sana mwanafunzi ana ufaulu wa kutosha, ameomba mkopo na vigezo vya kutosha, anakosa mkopo kabisa. Vinginevyo kulingana na hali ya maisha, anaendelea kujipa moyo kwamba ngoja niingie chuoni, labda mkopo unaweza kaingia ukanikuta chuoni. Wanakuja vyuoni, wanatumia gharama ndefu kujisajili ambazo wazazi wanagharamikia kiasi hicho, mwisho wa siku wanakosa mkopo kabisa na wanaamua kuachana na elimu kabisa. Kwa hiyo tuangalie namna ya kuweza kuwasaidia wanafunzi. Tuwe na idadi ya wanafunzi ambao watatoka kidato cha 6 ili tuweze kuwasaidia. Wanafunzi tayari wanafika miji kama Dar es Salaam, wametoka vijijini. Anapokosa mkopo utakuta wanazurura, wanatafuta kazi huku na huku. Waliohitimu wanakosa kazi. Je, au wanaokuja jijini? Kwa hiyo inaleta changamoto sana. Hivyo kupelekea hasa watoto wa kike unakuta wanajiuza, hana cha kufanya, utamlaumu nani? Nauli ya kurudi kijijini hana, kashaitumia kwenye usajili. Kwa hiyo tulitazame kwa jicho la pili. Inafanya vizuri lakini iangalie pia inapoteleza kwa ajili ya kuwasaidia wanafunzi wa Kitanzania.
Thank you. I expect you are brief enough. So you have 2 questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Mwisho kwa bodi ya kwa wizara ya elimu, tunaona ongezeko la sekondari, primary ni nyingi sana, lakini hatuoni ongezeko la vyuo vikuu Tanzania. Vyuo ambavyo vipo ni hivyo hivyo, idadi ya wanafunzi inazidi kuongezeka kila siku, madarasa yanajaa. Tunachokipata ni bora elimu na sio elimu bora. Kwa hiyo naiomba sana wizara ya elimu iliangalia hili kwa jicho la pili, kuhakikisha vyuo vinaongezeka hapa nchini au hata matawi yaongezeke ili kuweza kuwa accommodate idadi ya wanafunzi ambao wanaingia vyuoni. Asanteni.
Yeah, so for those who couldn't follow, she has 2 comments, one is to the Higher Education Board and the other one to the Ministry. To the Loans Board, the need to consider merit as a criteria for financing, and to the Ministry, the need to improve access to higher education financing by increasing the number of higher education institutions. So whether from the government or from the public institutions. So it's a policy request, and the ministry is here. I believe they have taken that. We had a hand at the middle. You're welcome.
Asante Mheshimiwa, samani naomba nitumie Kiswahili. Kwa majina naitwa Joseph Ntanga, ni loan officer wa chuo cha udaktari St. Joseph. Swali langu liliulizwa na mjumbe aliyopita lakini halikujibiwa. labda kwa vile kuna mheshimiwa kutoka NMB anaweza katusaidia. Kuna hili tatizo la ucheleweshwaji wa malipo. Unakuta disbursement inafanyika almost inafika mpaka wiki 4, lakini mwanafunzi anakuwa wa benki fulani anakuwa hajapokea malipo yake, na ukienda kufuatilia ukiulizwa anatuhumiwa muse katikati hapa. Na kwenye hii shughuli yetu ya leo sijamsikia muse, inawezekana labda angekuepo angetupa ufafanuzi zaidi, lakini kwa vile NMB yupo na CRDB yupo, basi hao inawezekana wakatupa majibu zaidi ili tuwe na amani hata sisi tunahudumia wanafunzi vioni. Asanteni.
Thank you for those who didn't hear. This is a student attesting some of operational challenges in terms of accessing disbursement, and I think just because this is an operational question, soon after the panelists are sat, I'll make sure that you are attended by whoever from representatives from the respective banks. So may I allow the panelists to wind up by yes, I'm taking these two last hands. That one and another one at the middle. Or those will be our two last speakers, and then the panelists will wind up.
Thank you very much. Dr. Wambuka Rangi from Open University of Tanzania. I would like to commend for a good presentation from Dr. Kimere, but I was wondering if in his analysis he has taken into consideration the presence of ODL, open and distance learning, in our country. I guess if you could take into on board, the projections could have not been the same. Thank you very much.
Sorry, before you sit, Dr. Chegere, did you get that? Can you repeat your question?
I just asked Dr. Kimere that in his projections on amount of money that the Loans Board need to support education, we have open and distance learning. We have also student-y. In open and distance learning, we have, we say that quality education, quality and affordable education. So my point is that, did he take into consideration the existence of open and distance learning and the support that open and distance learning students are getting from the loan body? That's the question.
Yeah, thank you. As I said in the analysis, the assumption was based on what is currently happening. So if there are students who are from the Open University and they're supported by the Higher Education Students Loans Board, then that is taken into account. But I mean, distance learning being a solution to the financing and to also reaching more of those who would want to have to acquire higher education, I think that's the point which already Dr. Kasile raised, and I think he mentioned that TCU is also keen into looking at how digitization of the programs could help in reaching the increasing number of higher education students. And so we are happy that you have really pointed out that the Open University is there, but I think even more and more universities are going into that direction to ensure that everyone who would wish to acquire higher education, they are able to get it.
So thank you for bringing this in the room, that technology can bridge some of the financing challenges. And during the era of Corona, it was a good example in terms of how distance learning was also another opportunity for access to education. So last question from my far right.
Yes, thank you very much. I was just reflecting on the presentation on effects on fee-free education, and connecting with the previous panel, then I have a concern regarding loans and scholarship programs that prioritize science over arts programs. If we see Samia scholarship concerned with those who passed science very well, and these diploma courses favor science, then I'm questioning the impact on students from poor families, whom, by my understanding, I see that they don't always pass well in science subjects. Most of them pass in art subjects. So how do we ensure that we have equity and inclusivity in provision of education? The key question is the impact on students from low families when we prioritize science over art subjects. Thank you.
This question is not directed to any of the panelists, but however, in their concluding remarks, I allow them to talk about it. As Dr. Kasele said, it's an ongoing debate in terms of balancing between equity and inclusion. So whether with the limited resources we have, should we consider merit or should we consider equity, and where is the balance that will be acceptable for us all? It remains to be an unanswered question, but our panelists will comment on the same as they are finalizing. So from my far right, I allow the panelists to give their final comments to the panelists. I mean to the audience. We are time bad, please. Unless it is very, very burning. Yes, I see you standing and you can't stay with it, so I allow you to ask.
Yes, naomba nitumie Kiswahili. Mimi naitwa Daudi Masunga, ni kiongozi wa wanafunzi kutoka Kampala International University kama president. Mimi nataka kufahamu kwanza, hivi Wizara ya Elimu, huu ushauri tunaotoa hapa unachukuliwa au unachukuliwa? Kama unachukuliwa, naomba ili jambo lichukuliwe kwa ajili ya matumizi ya 2025-26, kwamba shule za msingi na sekondari na zile shule za high school zimeongezeka nchini, kama ambao tumeona zimejengwa nyingi, lakini wanafunzi pia wanaokuwa recruited kwenye zile shule wamekuwa wengi zaidi kuliko hapo kabla, wakati ambao zilikuwa zinalipiwa. Na kwa sababu hiyo sasa vyuo vikuu kama alivyosema mwenzangu pale vimepungua. Lakini sio hivyo tu, ni kwamba vyuo vikuu vya serikali ambavyo ndo Watanzania wengi wanategemea kusoma pale kutokana na kwamba ada zao ziko chini, vina academician wanaweka restriction ya namba au capacity ya wanafunzi ambao ina uwezo wa kuchukua kulingana na uwezo husika. Kwa mfano, ukienda Muhimbili pale ukataka kusoma medicine, unahitaji labda wanafunzi labda wanafika tu 150, lakini unakuta labda kwenye vyuo vingine unakuta wale wanafunzi wanapewa limitation, lakini wana sifa za kuingia pale. Kwa nini? Kwa sababu number capacity ya university. Sasa
Can you finalize your comment, please?
Yes, so nitaka kusema kwamba Wizara ya Elimu, ushauri wangu kwao wachukue kwamba waende wakaongeze capacity building ya kuchukua wanafunzi wengi kwenye vyuo vya serikali ambavyo ndivyo ada inakuwa ni nafuu. Lakini pia ukiangalia wanafunzi wengi wanakuwa wanaenda kwenye private institution ambazo ada zao ziko juu, na kwa sababu ziko juu, Bodi ya Mikopo imepunguza kiwango cha ada ambacho inatoa kwa wanafunzi ukikompea na 2022-23. Ukikompea na 2022-23, ukija 2023-24 wanafunzi wengi ada wamepewa boom, kwa sababu ile kutengeneza equity kwamba kila mtu apate. Kwa unakuta kwamba wanafunzi walioko kwenye private institution na hata wale walioko kwenye serikali wana postpone masomo, wanaondoka, unakuta namba kubwa wamekuwa recruited lakini baadaye wanaondoka kwenda nyumbani. Kwa naomba hili jambo kama Wizara ya Elimu inasikia, basi ilisikie. Sisi ni wadau wa elimu na ni muhimu tukasikilizwa kwenye hili jambo. Asante sana.
Thank you. For those who didn't follow, he's one of the student representatives overemphasizing the need for a policy response to ensure that there's adequate supply of there's adequate distribution of institutions offering higher education to ease access, but also continuing to address the imbalance in terms of financing. So may I allow the panelists now to conclude this session, please.
Yes, so very briefly, the needs for financing higher education are high and increasing. But everyone can play a role in this, as an individual, as institutions, but as a country, as we are looking forward into improving the quality of our education, the quality and the capacity of our human resource. Everyone has a role to play. As they say, play your role and you'll push the wheel somewhere. Kwa hiyo naamini tukifanya hivyo, we'll all reach to where we are targeting. On the question on whether the poor are not included.
We'll cite the question that was in relation to the delays in the disbursement. And I think my colleague from CRDB also responded. So without going into details as to which and why it has been the cause, I would say that our commitment is to make sure that students are receiving their loans on time. And that is, we have been working hand in hand with the Loans Board to achieve that. We have been focusing on addressing the challenges, and some of the challenges are not necessarily the technical challenge. Sometimes they originate from the student side, maybe when they fail to finalize the process of verification, etc. So our focus is to make sure that we make this process as smooth as possible, and we'll continue to ensure that all the technical issues that may arise are also addressed. So finally for us, I would say that this research will continue to feed on the insight that we are gathering on daily basis on developing solutions for higher learning education. And I will continue to say that we are committed to continue to be, to partner with the Loans Board and the Ministry of Education to come up with solutions that will for sure address the challenges that are facing this area. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kansia, and thank you for the NMB commitment into improving service efficiency. You're welcome, Dr. Kasile.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. My fellow Tanzanians, you will agree with me that financing higher education in a developing economy like our country, where resources are meager, but demands are many, is really challenging. We have seen from the presentations. There is a say in my tribe that goes like this: a problem shared is half solved. Let us work together for the benefits of our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kasile, for highlighting the need for collaborations and more collaborations. So thank you, my panelists. Your hands together for the panelists as they get back to their seats. Thank you for driving this evening discussion and making it live. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to thank you all for being attentive, collaborative, and free to share insights into addressing the financing question into most of our youth and our young population. So we have come to the end of today's timetable. In terms of the activity that were scheduled to be conducted in this conference. And ahead of us at around 20 minutes time to come, our CEO, Dr. Bill Kiwia, has prepared a cocktail part for you all. So you are all invited. And this doesn't require transport costs because it's just next to the conference hall. When you get out of the main door on your right, you'll see a white tent. There is where it will be happening. So you are warmly welcome, and the ushers are there to serve you. It's an opportunity for us to know each other, to exchange business cards, but also finalize those business deals that we have, and we are very busy that we don't have time to meet, and this is the time that we have met. Once again, I want to remind you that this conference is proceeding tomorrow, and we are expected to be seated here at around 8:30 a.m. And tomorrow, as you all saw that today, other than the opening ceremony, we were giving a foundation of the financing agenda, giving the evolution of HESBU, what we were, what we have been able to achieve, and the aspirations for HESBU, the 20 years journey, but also we have been able to project the demand for loans until 2030. So we are setting a foundation for tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll be having two major sessions. The first one will be the World Bank paper that highlights about global perspective and prospect of higher education financing. So we'll get an opportunity to hear from our colleagues from World Bank Tanzania to give us the international perspective of the topic of higher education financing. But over and above that, we have our colleagues, our partners and friends who have traveled miles away, some from South Korea, others from Brazil, and others from Malaysia. So for those who have been in those countries, you can imagine how long is from Brazil to Tanzania. You need to have 15 hours flight from Brasilia to Dubai and another 5 hours. And so you can imagine someone has come all the way over 20 years flight hours to come and share to you. So I urge that tomorrow we be here on time and maximize the opportunity to hear from other jurisdictions in terms of the experiences they have implemented, the use cases, and what works and what doesn't work in terms of the higher education space. So thank you all, and can we clap for ourselves for being attentive, supportive, and I wish you a very good evening and looking forward to see you at the cocktail party outside. Asanteni sana, sana, sana.